In 1912, a single internal memo rewrote 5 centuries of American history. It did not correct an error. It buried a discovery, and the man who made that discovery had been dead for 200 years and could not fight back. The Upper Peninsula of Michigan is one of the most metal-rich landscapes on the continent. Beneath its forests and frozen soil sits copper that humans have extracted for at least 7,000 years. That part they allow. The copper is too visible, too documented, too difficult to deny. What they do not advertise is what Father Claude Dablon found in 1670 when he pushed deeper into that territory than most Europeans had dared to go. Dablon was a Jesuit missionary, a careful observer, and a meticulous recorder. His mission reports, written in French and preserved in the archives of the Society of Jesus, were not speculation. They were administrative documents meant for his superiors in Quebec. In those pages, Dablon described something that should have rewritten every textbook covering North American history. He described iron smelting, active furnaces, heat management, slag removal, a process he recognized as metallurgical because it was metallurgical. The tribes of the Great Lakes region were not chipping stone. They were working iron, and they had been doing it long before any European ship crossed the Atlantic. For more than 2 centuries, those reports sat in archives. Scholars occasionally cited Dablon on other matters: his geographical observations, his accounts of tribal customs, his notes on language. The iron furnaces were treated as a curiosity, a probable misunderstanding, the words of a man who did not know what he was looking at. Then in the 1890s, Smithsonian-affiliated researchers cataloged a collection of artifacts recovered from Upper Peninsula sites: slag deposits, smelted fragments, tool precursors that bore none of the manufacturing signatures of European trade goods. The catalog entries were explicit. The accompanying notes described the pieces as evidence of pre-contact indigenous metallurgical activity. For roughly 20 years, those artifacts sat in that catalog, correctly identified, quietly waiting for the academic world to catch up. It never got the chance. In 1912, someone inside the Smithsonian Institution wrote a memo. It was not a peer-reviewed reassessment. It was not the product of new excavation or new chemical analysis. It was an administrative decision authored by a single individual that reclassified every artifact in that collection as European trade material. Iron introduced through commerce. Iron that came off a ship. Iron that belonged to the story they had already agreed to tell. After 1912, any researcher who pulled those catalog records found not a discovery, but a footnote about trade routes. Dablon's mission reports did not change. The artifacts did not change. The memo changed everything else. What made the 1912 reclassification so surgical was its precision. It didn't destroy the artifacts. It didn't burn the records. It simply changed a label, and in doing so, changed history. The Smithsonian's Bureau of American Ethnology had spent nearly 2 decades cataloging materials pulled from excavation sites across Michigan's Upper Peninsula. Field notes from the 1890s expeditions described slag deposits, tuyere fragments, the clay nozzles used to direct air into a furnace, and partially smelted iron blooms found in direct stratigraphic association with indigenous ceramics dated well before European contact. These were not surface finds. They came from sealed archaeological contexts. The catalogers at the time knew what they were looking at. Their own documentation said so. Father Claude Dablon was not a man prone to fantasy. His 1670 report to the Jesuit superior in Quebec was an administrative document, a mission log, the kind of record written for bureaucrats and bishops, not for posterity or legend. In it, he described what he witnessed among the Ojibwe and neighboring nations near the shores of Lake Superior. Structured hearths, bellows operation, and the deliberate reduction of ore into workable metal. He used the Latin term officina ferraria, iron workshop. He noted the technique was not new to the people practicing it. He described it as something inherited, something old. That report sat in the Jesuit Relations Archive in Paris for over 2 centuries, before American researchers translated and published it in the 1890s. By 1912, its most significant passage had been academically quarantined, cited only to be dismissed. The anomalies in the physical record compound the problem. Iron artifacts recovered from the same Upper Peninsula sites include bloom fragments with a carbon signature inconsistent with European wrought iron production methods of the 17th century. A metallurgical analysis conducted in 1974 by a researcher at Michigan Technological University found phosphorus and slag inclusion patterns that matched low-shaft furnace smelting, a technique distinct from the bloomery forges that European traders and missionaries would have carried into the region. That analysis was published in a regional geology journal with a circulation of fewer than 400 subscribers. It was never cited by the Smithsonian. It was never challenged either. It was simply ignored, which in institutional terms is the more effective response. Then there is the memo itself. The 1912 internal reclassification document, referenced in the Smithsonian's own Bureau of American Ethnology Administrative Correspondence, does not offer a scientific rationale. It does not cite new fieldwork. It does not reference a competing analysis of the slag or the Tuyere fragments. It references a policy. Specifically, it references the need for consistency with the established framework of North American technological development, which at that time meant the doctrine that indigenous peoples of the continent had not independently developed iron smelting. The memo was signed by a bureau administrator, not an archaeologist. The artifacts were relabeled trade goods sourced from French contact, and that relabeling was applied retroactively across the catalog. Dozens of specimens that had been individually described as evidence of indigenous metallurgy became overnight unremarkable objects of European origin. The original field notes were not destroyed. They were refiled under a heading that ensured they would never be the first thing anyone looked at. What this erasure protected was not just a historical narrative. It protected an entire institutional architecture built on the assumption of technological hierarchy. If Great Lakes tribes were smelting iron before sustained European contact, then the story of what Europeans brought to this continent requires fundamental revision. The copper culture of the Upper Peninsula is already one of the oldest known metalworking traditions on Earth, dating back 5,000 years. The transition from copper work to iron smelting, given access to iron-bearing geology in the same region, is not a leap that requires European instruction. It is a logical progression. Dablon saw it, the 1890s catalogers documented it, and in 1912, someone in Washington decided that the record needed to say something else. Father Claude Dablon was not a man given to fantasy. His 1670 mission report to his Jesuit superiors in Quebec described, in methodical and precise Latin, what he observed near the southern shores of Lake Superior. Stone-lined furnace pits, slag deposits, and tribal metalworkers producing iron implements through a smelting process that bore no resemblance to simple cold hammering of native copper. Dablon named the location, described the fuel sources, and noted that elders spoke of the practice as ancient, inherited from generations no living person could count. This was not a passing observation. It was a documented account from a trained, credentialed European observer embedded in the region for years. When Smithsonian field archaeologists cataloged the physical remnants from those same areas in the 1890s, they logged slag nodules, Tuyere fragments, and bloom iron samples under a classification that acknowledged indigenous metallurgical origin. The catalog entries exist, the accession numbers exist, and then a single internal memo, dated 1912 and authored within the Bureau of American Ethnology, reclassified every one of those artifacts as European trade material, without new excavation, without new analysis, without a single additional piece of physical evidence. The memo cited theoretical incompatibility with the established narrative of pre-Columbian indigenous technological capacity. That is the tell. They did not disprove the original classification. They simply decided it could not be true, and they buried it in language designed to make the question disappear. The stakes here go beyond one discovery. If Great Lakes tribes were operating iron smelting furnaces before sustained European contact, the entire framework of what they allow us to believe about indigenous technological development collapses. The copper culture of the Upper Peninsula already demonstrated complex metallurgical knowledge stretching back thousands of years. Dablon's account in the physical record confirmed the next logical step was taken. What the 1912 reclassification protected was not accuracy. It was a hierarchy of civilization that required indigenous peoples to have been waiting, static, for European arrival. Correcting that record does not diminish European history. It restores indigenous history to what the evidence always showed it was. What do you think drove that 1912 decision, deliberate erasure or institutional denial, so deep it became policy? Drop your theory in the comments because this community finds the threads others walk past. And if you believe the buried record deserves to be brought into the light, subscribe, because every week we dig up another story they hoped you would never find.